Hi, folks. You're with Tacitus Today, your pushback channel, and thank you for joining this radio audio live stream. In this essay, I'd like to talk about a phenomenon I've sort of come across, I guess, a little bit by accident. You know, every now and again, something will appear in your recommended list, which sort of seems out of whack with the sort of stuff you look at. But I normally look at it like on YouTube. So the video, one video came up, which was a black convicted black guy who'd been convicted of a crime, or a series of crimes, in fact, and he was a bit of a career criminal anyway. But he expressed what seemed to be genuine bewilderment of, well, why are you trying to make me accountable for this? You know, why are you? Why are you trying to apply these laws to me? Those are white man's laws. They're not legitimate laws that should apply to me. Now, it's a clear crime here. There's no ambiguity or nuance to it. The law here is quite clearly codified. There's no discrimination on race. It's a crime. That's it. And the prescribed conviction, the proper process was used. The prescribed conviction was within the bound. In fact, it was at the very bottom end, the lowest end of so that whereas it was up to 12 months in prison, the person, even though again they're a career criminal, they only got 6 weeks in prison. But they were they appeared to be bewildered. Well, I didn't do anything wrong. I mean, why are you sort of putting this high bar of behaviour on me when I live in a community where no such behaviour is viewed as acceptable or even aspirational. So, and there's a number of videos out there with black people, not simply black people in the United States, but also, say, in Europe or Britain or Australia even. And it's pretty much the same thing. They're really bewildered by, well, why are you holding me to white man's standard of behaviour? Why? That's not right. It's wrong. And so the argument is that very indirectly and sort of almost from a third tier point that it's somehow racist because you expect me to behave and conform to the same laws as a white man does. But why should I conform to those laws? They're white man's laws. It's therefore illegitimate. It's therefore racist. It's therefore oppression, and so on. So they go through sort of a Marxist sort of bunch of calisthenics on that. But the bewilderment, we're not talking high IQ people, by the way, but nonetheless, the bewilderment seems to be fairly universal from minorities. I'm using black people as a reference point here, but could also apply to, say, a lot of the Arabic peoples as well, or the Islamic activists, things like that. Anyway, let's have a look at a few of those. So now the first one that I saw was a young black man. I think he's 18. He's already got 2 children, father of 2, and I doubt his IQ is much over 80, but anyway, clearly got out of school as quickly as he could. I can't imagine he was a very promising student, and he sort of hangs around with other black people. I don't think he knows any white people other than ones he may have met while he was at school or something, but he hangs around, and he's from a black neighborhood, hangs around with an all black gang, and now he harassed and robbed a number of people, all of whom were white. So none of his victims were non-white. They're all white people who lived in houses that they owned, and so he was targeting better off white people. And in the first round of, bear in mind he's already got a criminal record, but in the first round of doing this, he was let off with a warning and a good behaviour bond, and which he broke sort of on the day he got out of the court. So he went back, and they just gave him another finger wag lecture. And now he all the while is claiming he is the victim. He's done nothing wrong. And then when the third time he breaks bond conditions and breaks bail conditions, and again, and then commits the crimes again, then he gets a fairly light prison sentence. And again, he goes online but he seems to be, well, I didn't do anything wrong. Well, what's wrong? What did I do? The stuff that I stole was returned. The threats and harassment I made, well, I didn't really mean it. The hurt and pain I caused or something, well, that's their problem, not mine. But the bottom line was, he came, look, why you expect me to behave and be like a white person does? Why do you place those same requirements on me? I'm black. I come from a black neighborhood. We behave, we live differently, we think differently, we act differently. So why are you imposing white man's behavioral standards on me? It's not fair, and it's unreasonable. And anyway, those are white man's laws for white people, in the way that white people live, and the way that white people, the behavioral standards of white people. So why should those laws apply to me anyway? I'm not white. So those laws and the processes, the courts, that's all white man stuff. It's not legitimate. The way we do it in the hood, if someone breaks the code of conduct of the hood, is we beat them half to death or kill them. Like, why do we have to worry about your mamby-pamby bullshit laws? But we do want to live in your society, however, because it's nice and rich and we get lots of handouts, but we don't want to live by any of your rules. So, it's absurd on the face of it, and even when you start to drill down, but it's something that's quite common, and something that even white college kids sort of have that saying, well, those are just straight line Christian laws. Why should I or anyone follow it? So, the increasingly larger white population, particularly the college kids and, the people in the educational establishments and the public service who become mortally offended on behalf of some minority group, which itself is an interesting one. There's some people that we know, they live in their $5 million house and drive their $250,000 car, and particularly her, she gets morbidly and bitterly offended on behalf of black people in Africa or something, and as they this will be mentioned as they get into their $250,000 car to drive to their $900,000 yacht to go sailing in the harbour, and that sort of stuff. I'm sure she knows a lot about oppression and suffering, but this is the black people or minority groups. I'm using black people only as the example. It could be other minority groups, gay, lesbian, or trans or something. But they all arrive at the same point: is that the laws you have govern or have a big influence over behaviour. Therefore, if I decide to behave differently, I don't want to have to conform to those laws. And if I do behave differently, commit crimes and so on, then the effect is that I'm being held accountable for social interactions, including criminal ones, that I don't agree with, or why do I have to meet those standards? Because by making or creating a scenario where I have to meet those standards, I'm much more likely to digress and commit criminal acts than a straight white person would, whose those laws and behavioural are built around white society, straight white male society. That's the assertion, at least. But it's absurd, sort of in every way, because you say, well, murder. Well, don't you think murder's wrong? Wouldn't you agree that sort of murder is wrong? Well, it's only wrong if straight white people do it. It's not wrong if we do it. That type of thing. So they expect or demand or require a double standard. But the underlying argument they have is white man's law is not legitimate. It's not legitimate to me. If I decide to commit murder, it's for good reasons. If a white man does it, then it's for evil, malevolent reasons. So, and they've been trained to think this way by the media, of course, the educational establishment, social workers, and so on. Now, if you look at how lenient the sentences a lot of these people are getting, but they still, again, at the bottom end, the minimum end of what sentence, even for a career criminal, they're still given the minimum, but they still view it as unjust insofar as it must be illegitimate. It's white man's law. Why do we have to be subject to it, and why do we have to have those standards of behaviour imposed on us? And you see those same sort of attitudes in the mass migration arena. Why should we be held to standards of being able to speak good English, or have a good education, or have skills or employment skills? Why should we be held to that standard? We want to go to a rich country so we can parasite off it. Why should we be denied that? We've seen on television how you people live, or online how you people live in the first world. We come from a dirt poor basket case third world, and we want some of what you've got. And it also comes into the communal attitude that a lot of these third world people have. I mean, they don't have much. They're not rich countries. They don't have a developed capitalist economy. So they have a very different view of what you can own or allowed to own. And so there's a very communal attitude where the whole village shares its resources, meager resources, hand to mouth, subsistence resources, so that they'll share those things around more or less equally. I mean, it doesn't mean that the chief doesn't take a bigger piece of the action. I'm sure that happens, or it does happen. But they're much more likely to share and trade and say, well, we'll give you this, and if you give us that, we'll give you more of this sort of the corn if you'll give us some more of the wheat, and so there's a lot of sharing. And when the best hunter in the village goes out and grabs the antelope for communal dinner, the view is that should be shared more or less equally among the people in the village or the tribe. So this communal ownership thing also comes into the concepts of how law should be administered. And you see this again in say the Pacific Islanders that come to Australia. The people who have the authority of the tribal chieftains, the heads of family groupings and so on. And because they can very easily socially outcast you if you don't behave, there's a lot of respect or adherence to the tribal customs and habits, because the punishments can be excommunication effectively if you don't behave. But once they come to Australia, then they're freed from all the very they're small islands anyway. But the village, the entire village will turn against you if you misbehave. Whereas they come to Australia or a Western country, and they're not restricted by the village elders. Tend not to come. It's the younger people who come. So they're freed from all of that cultural supervision, if you will, that once occurred. They're now in a big city with millions of people. So none of those methods of social control or keeping people, to getting them to be well behaved, that's all gone. And so they can do what they want. So they have to try and come to grips with the idea of you can be arrested by someone you don't know, a police officer. You can be held to account by codified laws that are not a part of village customs and rights handed down by village elders and witch doctors. You have to go to prisons that are administered by prison officers who you don't know, and so on. So you'd be sent to prison by a judge who you don't know, who's not a member of your family, not even a member of your tribe, for goodness sakes, not a member of your race. So all this is completely foreign. That's not how authority and so on is administered. So you see these parallel societies of minorities, blacks in this case, still in the United States, having many of the behavioral habits that they had 400 years ago in Africa. They're still in the US today, even though they've been living in a white society for 200, 300, 400, 500 years. In terms of generations they've been in the West, but they see authority and power and accountability and so on as being very much tied into their race, their hood, their culture, their way of existence, and the existence that these black gangs and groups have in the all black neighborhoods and so on is very different from the white neighborhood. and it's almost a foreign universe of behavior and of laws and what is an act of trespass, what isn't. I can go and bash up any black guy on the street and take his money, but when I do it to a white person, you want to arrest me and put me in prison. Why do I have to be accountable to that? So these are the things. But I was surprised at how many of these people, or certainly the ones I see online, believe that they're being very unreasonably held to a behavioural standard that's a white man's standard, and that it's not legitimate when it's applied to them. It's, well, I didn't really do anything wrong. What did I do? So I beat a few people up, stole things. So I murdered some guy. So I stabbed some guy. Who cares? That happens every minute of every day in the hood. Well, why are you trying to hold me to that standard of behaviour? So that's an interesting phenomenon, one that should be examined. But the tragedy is that these people are being encouraged to see white man's law, independent, impartially administered law by courts and police. They're being encouraged to see that as racist and illegitimate and so on, which isn't doing very much for social cohesion, as the BLM and the Antifa riots have shown. You've been fantastic today. Your Pushback channel. Thank you for listening.